about that. Motherfucker. Good morning and welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is dedicated to the disease of substance use disorder and the impact that it has on the person struggling with the addiction, and especially the impact that it has on the rest of the family and loved ones associated with the patient. I lost my son 5 years ago, so we need to bring awareness and forget about the shame and stigma, because it is a national epidemic at this point in time. And there is a path to recovery, and we need to celebrate recovery more often than we need to talk about the problem always. Recovery needs to be first and foremost also along with the problem. There's so many facets to this overwhelming disease. So today, my friends are here. Millie Garofalo, who is a clinician, and right now is the clinical director for Families in Supportive Treatment, and Nicole Carey, who works for Central Nassau Guidance and is the clinical coordinator for Northport East Northport Drug and Alcohol Task Force.
A mouthful.
That's a mouthful. And is doing a color run this weekend in Northport.
Yes.
So let's first get, so when we talk about what are we doing to prepare our children to say no, we want to put a bubble around them, quite honestly. We want to create those protective factors that go around our kids and give them the ability to understand the importance of saying no.
Yes. The color run really, the idea sprung off of the fact that the district does Recovery Awareness and Prevention Week, which is a week-wide initiative that does...
And by the way, that's going on everywhere right now. It's Red Ribbon Week.
Yes.
October 23rd.
Yes.
Through the 27th.
It should be Red Ribbon Year.
It should.
Very true.
So we know that there are specific programs and activities that are going on at all different levels in our school. And as a coalition, we said, no, we need to do a little bit more. Let's bring it to the community. So it was really to bring awareness and buy-in from the community about what's going on in the school district and maybe hit a different sector. When we talk about coalition work, we want to be able to impact not just the kids. We want to hit businesses, parents, and other community members that may not be aware of what's going on or what programs exist, and give them a healthy alternative, have them come out on a Saturday afternoon or morning.
And have fun.
And have fun.
Without drugs and alcohol.
Without drugs and alcohol. But I think, so our good friend Kim Laube, who does prevention better than anyone.
Yes, she does.
Just talking about
Always.
it yesterday.
When we change the community norms, it's not just people saying, well, the schools need to do more.
Right.
Well, the church needs to do more. Well, the parents need to do more. Everyone needs to do more. We need to be cohesive, not in silos.
Exactly.
But we also need to change the community norm from red cupping at a football game to participating in a color run with no drugs and alcohol. And, tell your kids, we tell them all the time, oh, you don't need drugs and alcohol to handle life
Right.
or have fun, but we have to show them.
Right, the actions don't always match, which is an ongoing problem. So for us, it gives us a platform to be able to talk to the community while they're there for 15 minutes around, what is this? What's going on in your school? Are you aware what your community has to offer? To get them engaged, to get them involved. Break down the stigma, because really that's what it's about. People are really uncomfortable talking about recovery, prevention, awareness, and they don't even really know the right definitions to assign to those words. So in their heads, they are kind of like uncomfortable.
Yes.
So it's a fun way to make it not uncomfortable. The kids are super excited. The community support and response has been overwhelming.
When your kids are doing something wrong, parents think that they did something wrong
Right.
to create
Exactly.
what happened in their child's life. And it really has very little to do with parenting. It has nothing to do with parenting.
Right.
Because who's affected right now? The upper middle class on Long Island, upper middle class
Yeah, right.
athletes are probably the ones most exposed.
Right.
So we're talking about, we have to get over what you pictured in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s. It's a whole different epidemic.
Right. Right.
So we do need to assign, this is just healthy. I like to think of it as healthy and wellness
Yes.
for a community, for a family.
Right.
Learn how to do things differently.
Yeah, I think we all need to, even.
We all need to learn
know.
how to do things differently.
So it's good for the whole community, the kids, the parents, all of us.
I had a conversation with someone that I work with, and she has a 7th grader. And she's, that 7th grader, 12, 13 years old. So
rough.
we just talked about different strategies. And I love the idea, and I wish more families would do it. At 8 o'clock, all phones go to a docking center, and it's family time, or it's quiet time, or it's reading time, or whatever the individual wants to do without the use
Right.
of technology.
I might have said this to you before, I'm not sure, but in my practice as a therapist, I see a lot of teenagers, and I would have a lot of teenagers come in, and the parents would come in before or in between sometimes and meet, and they'd be complaining about their kids' use of their cell phones and electronics, and it's on the table during dinner, all this kind of stuff. That was like 5 years ago. Now I have kids, 14-year-olds coming in and saying, I try to talk to my mom, but she's not listening because she's on her phone playing Candy Crush. And it's not just once, it's not just twice, it's a theme now. So,
Isn't that sad?
yeah. So we all need to put it away.
We all need to
We
put it
do,
away.
But we've developed and we've encouraged systems that don't support that.
Right.
Okay, because I could speak at different, like my daughter gets homework that, she always has to be on the computer. All her homework assignments
Right.
are
Yeah.
computer-based. You send extra, you want your kid to do programming, everything's on the computer, so it's mixed messages. So once again, when we move forward in the successes for how we do with implementation for school stuff, there's always kind of like a unintended consequence.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on right now, because there's no filter, there's no disparity, there's no difference. It's kind of like the kids are on the phone all the time, so let's meet them where they're at. So now all their homework assignments are
Right.
computer-based. Every enrichment thing is computer-based.
Yep.
So we're feeding it.
New York
And-
State
and-
Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse you can text to HOPE
Yes.
to meet them there. So yeah, I get it. But I think that we still have to somehow encourage
Yeah, we need balance.
we need balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's lacking in so many families right now, including
Yeah.
You're so overwhelmed with the responsibilities that you have in the world
Yep.
that when do you shut down?
Right.
When do you just be quiet and sit and watch a movie
Right.
Yeah.
with your kids?
I'm also seeing in my practice a lot of people of different ages coming in and saying, I can't remember things. I don't know what's going on. And all different ages, 30s, late 20s. And I feel like it's because we're overloaded. We are overloaded. That there's only so much we can take in at once. It wasn't like this when we grew up. I sound so
No,
old.
I know, I know.
But the truth is, it wasn't.
The truth is, it wasn't.
Right? So we had a lot less input. Now we're on all of the time.
And if the phone
we
rang
can't
in the
remember
house,
everything.
My father would answer it, or my mother would answer it and say, "No, she's not coming to the phone.
Right, yeah.
She'll talk to you tomorrow."
Right,
There was that.
right, right.
So I think we have to go back to that.
Yeah, yeah.
We definitely need to make we need to push back and have some balance. in
balance.
how-
We need balance.
I don't think we're going to go back to it
We're never going to go
completely.
back to what it was.
Right,
No.
but balance is key.
But for very young families, instead of giving kids quiet time, because I know how easy it is
Give
to
them the
give
iPad.
in to giving them the iPad or your phone for that quiet moment, right? Because kids can be,
Hard.
yeah, when they're, but why? And my father and my next door neighbor, same generation, the World War II generation. My kids, you know, when you were on the phone with, that's when hell broke loose.
Always.
Always. So my father once said to me, don't let the, and he used a word, and it wasn't directed at my kids, but it was something that they used to say in work. He goes, don't let them weigh you down. He goes, it's right now that you need to dig in and be that much stronger, because once you give in to when they're creating this unbalance because you're on the phone,
Right.
you've set the tone.
Right.
And then one day I was out front and the same kid was doing the same thing, and my neighbor said the same exact thing as my father did.
Right.
I'm one of 5. He raised 4 kids. He's like, no, that's when you really have to stand tall as a parent, which is interesting.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean, we were together at a presentation by Dr. Dewey not too long ago, and there's new data that supports how computer use at a young age is not good for the development of the brain and what it actually does. So maybe bringing more awareness around that on the back end to educate parents that, you know, it could be dangerous, just like we do other things, kind of a health model.
It is a health model, but you know, thank you for remembering to bring that up, because let's put it this way: Steve Jobs never let his kids play on an iPad or an iPhone.
Wow.
So let's think about that for a second. He already knew what it was going to do. It's addictive behavior.
Right.
Candy Crush.
Absolutely.
Right? Candy
Yep.
Crush.
Oh yeah.
I got into that for a little while, and then
Yeah.
I deleted
Same
that game
here.
because I
Same
couldn't.
here.
It's like, oh my God!
How much time am
I
I
have to
spending
buy.
on-
I have to buy this, you know, and you get caught up in playing that game.
I
never did it?
It's
no.
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's gone. Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Because I know I can find better things to do with my
Someone
time.
was just telling me someone was just telling me the other day. There's like different versions of it now. It's
Oh,
I don't even know.
monsters
Are
and
there?
this
I don't
and that,
even know.
and they have it on TV, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Right.
stay away.
You
from
know
it.
what? And it's not saying that you can't do that at all, right? It's about moderation. It's about
Yes.
balance
It's
is
balance.
the key word for all of it. Because, you know, sometimes if we need to kind of zone out and somebody wants to do that, who's to say that that doesn't help them, right?
Right.
But it's when it's your kid is trying to talk to you and you're not talking to them because you're on the phone and
you're-
you're not connecting with humans.
Well,
Yeah.
it's that socialization
That's
piece
the
that we were
problem.
talking
Yes.
about today, and about how kids today are just not connected the way that, you know, we were. They have inappropriate exchanges through text. They could kind
Well,
of
you can be a big, bold person through
Yeah.
text. You know,
You can
I
hide
almost feel
behind it
that
and say
you can
whatever
hide
you want.
behind it. You can say whatever you want, because you would never say it to that person
Absolutely.
in person.
Yep.
But we have a responsibility. So this is a parental thing. You have a responsibility to not engage in that type of stuff. You need to teach your child, right?
Yes.
So when they text you and they say specific things, sometimes you need to be able to say, this isn't a conversation we should have through text. When you get home, maybe we'll talk about it over dinner. You know, we need to teach them, because they don't know any better anyway, because the whole
And they're still going to push through texting the same way that they would push through.
yeah, of course.
You know, and I learned, and I just learned it one day. I said, do you want my answer right now? Because I'll give you the answer. You want to give me 15 minutes to think about what you just said to me? Your choice. Answer right now. You're not going to like it. Oh, okay. You know.
Right.
And then I created a different engagement with my kids.
Right.
But the answer is no. Good. We're done with that conversation.
Right. But we're in a world where everyone's overstimulated. I mean, I don't even, if you asked a kid to sit still for 5 minutes, even the best child, I don't know if they could do it.
They can't, because they always want something new. They're used to bombardment.
Yeah, and
So is it ADHD? No, I don't think so.
right.
I really don't think so.
I went into the store the other day, and this is just what baffles my mind, you know, when you think about just where things are going. And I don't know if you've seen them. There's these like squishy things that look like either like hot dog. They look like dog toys, really, and they are mimicking like pressure balls, and they
Right.
smell like different things, and the kids are going crazy over them. And it's absurd to me that these are the things that kids are going crazy over because they're not using them for the right thing.
reasons,
It's,
right.
it's weird. I have to bring you one in. Like,
Yeah, that's weird.
It looks like it's a foam thing.
Well,
that
we
you
did
squeeze.
these squish, the fidgets, the
Right.
fidget spinners, the this, the that.
Right. And we're talking about overstimulation, right? But that's also talking about stress. So there's so much more stress through the technology of today than there was. So, using them for stress balls might not be so bad, but
But it's the fact
stress
that we
relief.
need them and
But,
that
right.
they're marketed
Why
towards kids.
children? That's like, there's something going
know,
on.
Yeah.
I mean, I have, as I see a lot of adolescents. You know the thing about the Snapchat streak.
Yes.
Oh.
No, I don't know about the streak. I know Snapchat, but I don't know what the streak
So there's
is.
Snapchat, and their kids are snapping everything. Everything they're doing, their food, where they are, just funny faces. It's cute. It's fun, but
It's
it's
obsessive.
now.
But it's obsessive.
Yeah, it's become obsessive. So now there's something called a streak, where if you're snapping somebody that individually, and then they snap you back, you have to do that every single day to get a streak. It's like a focus and a job that these kids end up doing. I'm at 325 with so and so, and they're doing it with tons of people, not just one person.
But it's
So
not,
how are you
It's
paying
mindless.
attention in
It's
school?
mindless.
Right, it's mindless.
it's kind of like streak, boom, picture, make a face, picture, streak, boom, and they
Right.
hit like it's like doom, 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 and they have to open them and answer them because if you don't open them and answer them, then you're going to get judged for not opening them or answering
Right.
them, and then you're scared about what somebody might think. And
So during class, they're doing this.
if you're allowed to have a phone,
Right.
but it could be class or break or any other time that you would have a social interaction with another human being, this is what their time is spent doing.
And what started out as even a social thing on some level, Snapchat was social, right? I mean,
Snapchat was originally created
well,
for the
I know,
adult world.
I know, I do. Okay, I know, but
Was it?
Yeah.
yes, because the
don't
pictures
have time.
disappear.
I don't
so
have time for that.
yeah, right. But if you're doing it kind of like fun and light and want to find out what your friends are doing, but it's just now become pressure and stress.
To keep up.
It's
yes.
stress. It's stress.
That's the word. It's stress.
It's a job.
So
Adolescence has always notoriously been tough enough.
yes, right.
We
right.
can all attest to that.
Yeah.
It's not a comfortable time in anybody's life.
Right.
It's a time to pull away from your parents, trying to find yourself, trying to fit in, but still be you, who you want to be, and not who other people want you to be.
Right.
Such pressure all the time.
It's confusing.
It's confusing, and when you don't get asked out, and when you don't, it's devastating.
Right. Am I supposed to be fitting in because everyone wants to feel like they belong, or can I be myself? Where do I
fit?
fall?
Yeah, where?
How much do I do of one and not the other? It's a really hard
And for
time.
today,
Oh, it's
you
like,
have to fit in on a personal level. You have to fit in on a social media level.
Right.
On Instagram, on Snapchat, I don't think they use Facebook anymore, do they?
Not so much.
Not
Right.
so much.
no,
It's
but
those-
there's a big Twitter push for
Twitter,
the young people. Yeah,
So those three modalities right there take up an awful lot of time.
you're always
Yeah,
on.
You're always on. But you're not on with your true life.
No.
You're on with the perception of what you want other people to think what your life is.
Right.
So is it surprising that we see a spike in suicide?
No,
Which we are seeing a spike in
Yes, we are,
suicide.
right.
I believe out east, right, last weekend, was another young boy that said he was going out for a run and they found him. So
Well,
what
it's
are we doing?
it's alarming because when we talk about the development of the brain and how that happens and what parts develop before the other, and you talk about and you combine it with the overstimulation that goes on, how they're judging everybody's outsides to their insides, which isn't even comparable. You're not even, it's apples and oranges. And then they don't have a way to process or communicate what that looks like. because kids don't talk about feelings. They don't even know how to identify feelings anymore. It's, I'm happy when I'm happy because everything's going the way that I need it to go for me, and what am I getting out of it, which
Right.
is totally normal for a teenager. But there's the other side of it that there's no communication on. It's totally okay if it's not okay. And we don't,
That's the part that nobody addresses.
you know, and it's kind of like we applaud those who are strong and strong-willed and present that way, but we even know the strongest people in the world don't have a great, they're not on every single day.
No, they're not on every single
Yeah,
day.
and the comparing, others people outsides without insides is such a really important statement, because that's what we're seeing. Nobody knows what's going on inside somebody but that person themselves.
Right.
And unless there's some comfort level with being able to say, I'm feeling this,
Yeah.
it's hidden, and there's shame. There's a belief that nobody else is feeling that same way, and it's reinforced by social media when everyone's at a party
Yes.
and having a great time. I call Facebook put on a Facebook, because
Yeah.
we really are putting on a face. Nobody knows what's really going on, but for adults it's hard, but for a kid to see this stuff and understand that there's so many layers of it, it's really difficult. So it seems more black and white. They're having a great time, I'm in pain. What's
Right.
wrong with me?
Right. And it's always what's wrong with me.
Absolutely.
It's never what's going on in
Right.
me. You always
why
internalize.
am I feeling
That's
this?
humanness.
What's going on?
Right.
What's wrong? And then there's an isolation that starts to come along with it, just a feeling of not being like anybody else, and it just goes from there. So what Nicole said, and we were talking about this morning, is so important for kids to get the idea that it's okay to talk about their feelings and what's going on with them, and that everybody has it. And I believe some of that should be brought into schools. Where we talk about in schools, we want to bring in drug and alcohol programs. I think this needs to be part of it.
I think that, so when we talk about drug, and this is what kind of mind boggles me. In kindergarten, when parents hear drug and alcohol programs that are evidence-based, they never talk about drug and alcohols in kindergarten.
No.
It's coping skills.
Right.
So we need to rename these programs or just call it something else, because those are the
This
tools
is the core. Yeah.
Right.
that they need to learn that at that age. It's very different. Think about us and
Right.
trying to learn a new skill. Well, it's the same thing. Once you have grown into how you do business, it's
Right.
very hard to break a habit.
Right.
But if we start empowering them at such a young age to be able to come home and say, you know what, I didn't, and I use this as my example. Fortunately, my mom was home when I got home. So if you came home and your mom just, and I think moms still know that. You always kind of know when your kid's off.
Right. Right.
But it's that engagement then, without asking them, well, what's going on, because we need to talk about this right now because we have to move on to the next
Right,
task.
right.
Which is what happens now.
But there's a lot also that goes into that. I mean, there are some parents who never want it to be about their kid.
Right.
Because they don't even know what that means.
Right.
So it always has to be about somebody else, right? And that really doesn't address the issue that may need to be addressed.
Right.
Because you need to help your kid work through whatever they're responsible for themselves. Millie and I, we did talk this morning about it, because obviously I made a post, got really terrible. I heard of like 3 separate instances in the last 24 hours that were just really tragic for me. And it was like alarming, and it was sad. And I said, kids need to understand that they're not responsible for how other people feel, right? So they're not responsible for how another child feels, but they're responsible for how they treated another human being.
Absolutely.
And I think that there's sometimes like a disconnect in even that communication, right? So
Kids are mean.
Kids
to
are
each other.
mean.
And that's part of, kids were mean when we were little. Kids, it's just, you don't know, so you don't have that filter.
Right. And
But
you
they
definitely
can be
don't know.
taught.
Right. Yeah, you definitely don't know. And one of the things that I said this morning is that what comes to mind is when kids are mean, it's because they're hurting,
Absolutely.
right? So this is all about allowing kids to be able to express what's going on with them and sort it out and understand it.
Because the bully
Yes.
doesn't want to bully other. They feel so bad about themselves.
You
and
never
I've spoken
know.
to the bullies.
They're
Yeah,
insecure.
you
They're
never know what's
insecure, they're
going
this.
on inside
and
them.
when they make other people feel bad,
Yep.
it somehow makes them feel better.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's displacement of your emotion.
Of anger.
Anger, mostly, right.
Mostly anger.
Right.
And that can be stemmed from almost anything, you know, what's going on at home. So when we talk about the epidemic that's going on, we always really refer to this adolescent population or this 18 to 25-year-old.
Yep.
However,
Right.
we don't know what our kids are coming to school with either. Because there are plenty of parents
Yeah.
that have issues with drug and alcohol also.
Absolutely.
And kids are living that at home. I don't know what I'm going home to. No, I can't have friends at my house because I'm not sure if my mother or my father are going to show up and be,
Right.
wrecked.
Right. Oh, yes.
And how that translate into my life. And I need to keep that a secret because nobody else has this going on in their life. But they do have it going on.
They
in their
do.
life. Right.
And then there's stress on them.
A lot of stress.
And there have been demonstrated how to deal with the stress, so the pattern continues.
The pattern continues.
And we also look at like the adolescent population in the fact that that's when the kids start really going out and going to other people's houses and getting exposure for the first time to something that may be different than their own. So maybe you have a kid who doesn't necessarily, they may internally know that something's wrong or it doesn't feel right in my house or it's different, and then they go somewhere else and then all of a sudden they are emerged with a whole bunch of feelings because they're like, wow, my house is really not okay, and they have no resources to talk about it because then it's the scared, I don't want anyone to know.
I'm the only one.
I'm the only
I'm the
one.
only one that's going through this.
Yeah. So I mean that too plays a big part
Yeah.
in what goes on in the adolescent population, and it's tough. It's
I know
really
it really is tough.
it's not an
I,
easy.
And
I
the
wouldn't want to be a
expectations.
teenager in today's
Right,
world.
right. The expectations on these kids today is so intense. I was talking about when I applied to college. I don't even know how I decided where to go because there was no internet. So I went, I got some pamphlets, and I said, let me try there, and I applied to like 4
This
schools
works.
and got in, and that was it. Now it's like, I have just so much pressure to get into a certain
much pressure.
school and
At a
have
way
certain
too
kind of
early of
grades.
an age.
Right, right.
We're going to pick up this conversation when we'll be back in a few minutes.
My age is 18 years old and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin, I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had like aspirations of going to like an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within like a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to want to change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better, and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program, just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, like, you know, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that, like, I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, you know, it really does help you in life, and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more, and that was from the help of Outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to peer support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has got a lot better. Because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
I always feel like I'm
Welcome back to Resolutions to Recovery. So we really are having a great discussion here about so many things, but I think this disease is so, it's like peeling back an onion always.
Right.
So I mentioned to you this morning that now the newscasters are finally, you know, bringing light to other things. Grandparents raising grandchildren because parents, young parents, are either dead or addicted and not paying attention to their children. So we have grandparents that may be really in their 40s, 50s, you know, and upward in age from there, still raising other children of their own, taking care of elderly parents,
Right.
and being in a position where they have to dip into retirement savings, where they have to show up and raise another family. We haven't even seen
The repercussions
tip
of
of
all
the,
that.
we haven't seen the tip of the iceberg yet.
Right, which is also another reason why I think it's great to have coalitions or be connected with organizations in your community so you know what type of services and resources are available, because there are a lot of grandparents who are raising younger kids who's either lost their kids to substance use disorder or have custody because their children are active, but they're
Yes.
adult active children, and they're really not connected in the school. So that's why community-based work around prevention and just awareness and education is really, really important, because that's how you're going to be able to impact and do all the connections or build bridges where there's major lapses. 100%.
And yeah, and you know, I work for Families in Support of Treatment, a family organization, and clearly that's an example of how much addiction affects the family system.
Yes.
And now there are grandparents there that may not know enough about addiction, know how to handle it, know what to do.
But know
There's-
that they're grandchildren now.
Yeah.
Because this morning on this, it was on the Today Show. the grandparents
Which is
saying,
good.
my grandchild knows that, and says it out loud,
Mm-hmm.
that my mom chooses drugs over me. She doesn't want me.
Right.
I'm not important. You know, so for a 5-year-old to be cognizant of that fact,
To hear that, yeah.
that needs to be dealt with
Right. Mm-hmm.
through a lot of different, you know, everybody's got to be on board to bring this child forward.
Right.
Because that's not just going to be grandma and grandpa making that kid feel better.
Right. There has to be
That's a
education.
Education.
Deep-seated
Yeah.
thing for a 5-year-old to deal with.
To know that at 5 and live his life, you know, through
Right.
from then on, he's going to hold on to that, and it's not even true.
It's not true.
Right. So that's the
It's
issue.
not true.
Right. That the you know grandparents need to be educated on the disease of
Yes.
addiction,
Yep.
and that addiction is not about not loving somebody. It's,
Correct.
You know, that's the furthest thing
But we
from
need
the
to
truth.
wrap these kids in
Right.
therapy,
Yep.
in community work, in that, so everybody that touches them, there is no shame and stigma.
Right.
And there is a reinforcement of their value and their self-esteem.
Right.
Because at some point in time, if you carry that,
Oh, absolutely.
why wouldn't
You're
you
right.
do something?
yeah.
You're absolutely, you're ripe for the
Right.
picking.
Because if addiction is about loving, it's about not loving yourself.
Correct.
Not about how you feel about
And
anybody
it's
else.
about masking pain, you know.
Right, pain.
People don't. Why do people drink? They drink
To relax.
to relax, to engage with the opposite sex.
Right.
Right.
to escape.
To escape.
Right.
They don't. You know. You don't. Having a glass of wine with dinner because you really enjoy a glass of wine with dinner is one thing.
Right.
Having a glass of wine because under the guise of I had a bad day, so I'm going to have a glass of wine.
Right. Right.
Well, that's kind of what we talk about when we talk to our parents in the community, and we talk about language and the power of it and leading by example. Because there are a lot of parents who come home and say, I had a rough day, and then they go in and they like crack a bottle of beer or they pour themselves a glass of wine. And although there may not be poor intention behind it,
Correct.
right?
Absolutely.
A kid hears, I can drink and it will make me feel better. So it's the disconnect with what the consequence could be. And in today's world, our kids are exposed to a lot more dangerous substances at an earlier
Right.
rate.
Right.
And, you know, the addiction, it process is like, it's 6 months, basically, where their body becomes physically addicted to something. And we know alcohol is the number one.
Still the number one killer. So we can
Killer.
talk about opiates all we want, but it's not starting there.
Right.
No.
And I love what you say about the language, because how you say something
Yeah.
is so important. You know, it's, and we might not realize the power of words, but they're extremely powerful. But I also say what we do is so important. And I love Kim Lauby's exercise with the clapping.
Clapping.
Yeah.
I'm going to count to 3.
Yeah, she said. So she says, "I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to clap on 3," and she says 1, 2, and she claps at 2, and everybody follows her.
Right.
And the example is that people follow and watch what you do
Not what you
more
say.
than what
Right.
you
Right.
say, and that's what our kids are doing.
Yeah.
So that's just
And
extremely
I
powerful.
think, you know, sometimes parents forget that they're kids because they look older. They may, you may think that they're a lot further along than they truly are. You know,
Right.
because when I tell
There's a rush
parents,
to get.
there's a rush, you know, and I think well, my kid's not going to think that. That's stupid to think that. That's you using your adult brain to say, my kid would, yes, but they would.
Right.
Because they're 8 or 9 years old.
Right.
So what they have no knowledge in their brain.
Right.
Right.
So they're looking to you, and you are still the greatest influence.
Yes.
Is parents.
100%.
Right. Parents don't think that, you know.
No, they don't.
They'll say something like, "My kids aren't listening to me. They don't pay
You're
attention. I
planting
talk just to
seeds."
talk." You know, all this kind of stuff, and it can feel that way as a parent, right? You
Oh
can
my
feel like
gosh,
you're talking
yeah.
to the wall.
Yeah. And I used to say, am
but
I
you are-
speaking another language? I must be, because you're not listening to me.
Right. Right.
You know, everybody says the same things.
Right.
And then you walk away going, I just became my parent.
I just heard my mother.
Yeah.
It is.
But it's so
it is the
true.
feeling, because they may not be able to let us know how much they're hearing it. They may not
Right.
even know how much they're hearing it, but they are hearing it. They
seeds
are
are
listening
planted.
and watching.
Yeah. To everything that you say.
Right.
Right.
So if you say, you know, when you come home and you say I had a bad day, let's just skip dinner right now and let's go for a walk.
Right.
Because I need to blow off some steam.
Right.
I need some
So-
time to meditate.
I need
you know,
some time to meditate.
sit by
or,
myself.
Or let's just close the blinds and watch a movie, and I'm going to order pizza in.
Right.
And I need a break. My family will make me feel better, so let's just sit down and have a picnic in the living room.
Yes, right.
You know, so just different. We need to be different.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that the words that we choose to use are very powerful.
And the messages that we send, they're very powerful. Kids are sponges. They're intellectualizing things
Amazing.
at a faster rate than,
Their minds
Yes.
exponentially work
Yes.
faster than ours ever did.
but their
I truly
their
do believe
social
that.
emotional learning is not.
No.
Because we're not speeding up that process.
Right.
So like academically, we can have them excel and expose them to a whole bunch of different things, but the social emotional piece, the brain is developing as it's developed.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, and we know on average we say 21 to 25. That's not even a staple. You know, there's still a range even in between when we think we have full brain development between women and men or
Right.
kids. So
Well, we're women here, so women develop much faster.
We can say that.
We can say that. And we would all agree with that.
Yeah, of course.
but so there's always you know, in today's world there's a huge disconnect, and we are just on the go.
But you know, from a wellness point of view, so that's where I always love to go back to.
Yeah.
From a wellness point of view, if my child starts to drink at a younger age, I've stopped their emotional development and the development of their brain in a normal way.
Right.
So you can
Altered it.
have a 22-year-old who has the capacity of a 12-year-old.
Yes.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
in an adult body, able to make legal decisions
Right.
that have ramifications beyond what they're
Correct.
capable of hearing.
correct.
And that's scary because I know I lived it.
Right.
You know, and you say, you know, wow, he may be 20 years of physical age, but this is not a 20-year-old.
Right. And so, yeah, that's why it's so important
Yeah.
to obviously prevent or stop or delay the use of any of this stuff, right?
Right.
And the average age on Long Island, right?
I could only speak for where we're from. It's 11.5. So in the
For
north,
boys.
no, for the Northport East Northport community, when we did our last survey in 2014, 11.5 was the onset age that kids reported their first drink.
So that age has probably gone down to, I'm going to say 11
Right.
in 3 years.
Wow.
So that's, but you know, in speaking at treatment facilities to the patients, because they do hear from me, not from their own families, what they did to their families, because they've been removed from their substances too, so now they're listening differently. But I always ask that question. If you could go back and talk to you prior to your first use,
Right.
what age would you be? It used to be 12 to 14, and this is only in 3 years, and now it's 10 to 12.
Right.
10 to 12.
Right.
So when I look at my 10-year-old grandson, I say, my God, what are you thinking about? So we have very open, honest conversations
Good.
because I know what he's thinking about.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to pretend
Right.
that just because I'm looking at him and saying, he's a baby.
Right.
Yes, in my eyes,
Baby.
he's a baby.
Right.
But in his mind,
Right.
he's already over here.
Right.
thinking about other things.
And
Right.
they are, they are both, right?
Yeah.
They're babies, but they're also smart and insightful and are starting to really process and understand a lot of stuff, and they're definitely feeling a lot. So
Too much.
One of the things that I really stress with parents is the power of asking questions. And when I say that, I want to be clear, this does not mean grilling, right? It
Well,
doesn't
that's-
mean, where were you, what'd you do, when'd you do it, what's going on? It does not mean that. You're going to push any kid away with that.
You push
But-
any adult away with that.
True. And that's sometimes what the questions are, because we're
Right.
so concerned and we want to know all of this stuff. But it's really more about, what are you feeling? What's going on? Oh, something happened with Sue today. Oh, really? What happened? Did that make you angry? Did that make you sad? What did that make you feel? And letting them have some insight into figuring out their feelings and getting comfortable with expressing them and talking about them. And then the parent needs to answer, respond. Well, a lot of times if a kid comes home and has something going on with them and tells their parent, so-and-so was mean to me today, or didn't sit with me at lunch, or told me I wasn't allowed to sit with them, the first thing they're doing is calling the school, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm not saying that might not be something to do. It really depends individually on every situation. But the first question is to be where your child is.
Exactly.
With their emotion, and sit with it. And what you said before is so true. We all are busy. There are parents that aren't home. We're running out the door. We're
And that's no
working.
criticism or judgment. It's
definitely
life.
right.
But
And it's true. And it's sometimes we don't want to take
No,
that
it's-
on. We had
yeah.
a long day. We got to take on this, but it's our responsibility.
See, I think that that's like a presentation and an opportunity to have really healthy conversation
Right.
around a lot of things. Like, why do you think they didn't want you to sit with you?
Right.
Right? Because that could give, you could get an inside view of how your son or daughter thinks
What
about
they're thinking
themselves.
about themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's an opportunity to address it that way. I agree. A lot
It's
of
also an opportunity to say, how can we prepare you for tomorrow?
Right.
Also-
what
Not
do you
fix it
think?
for them.
Right. And what do you think?
Right.
You
or
might want to do.
Also, how important is it for you to sit with somebody who may not want to sit with you? Kind of like teaching self-respect and self-worth, and understanding that not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay too. And giving them tools that they could use when they go into the world and they have to
Yes.
deal with life on life's terms. So I agree that there is a lot of parental involvement, but there's also a fragility today with kids. And, as we see, suicide is on the rise. And, it's almost like scary, because the things that maybe parents have to
It
kind
is
of
scary.
negotiate is you don't know, right?
You don't know, but you know what? You can
Right.
pretend that you don't see the elephant in the room.
that's true.
you know?
Right. Right.
But the
And some-
elephant's still going to be in the room.
Right.
But one day it's going to be sitting on your kid,
Right. Right.
you know, and then there's no coming back from that.
Right.
So always easier to just get it over with, because then, listen, the hardest, even in work, right? So let's be honest, even in work, what's the first thing you should do every day? The thing that you hate to do most.
Right.
Because you will spend your day
Thinking about it. Yeah.
thinking about not doing
Yeah.
the thing you hate to do the most,
Right.
and you don't get anything else done anyway.
Right. Right.
So if you get the thing that you hate to do the most over with, things kind of fall into place. So it's the same thing, listen, even when we negotiate jobs and whatever, you have to deal with people that you really don't want to deal with.
Right. Right.
So do you avoid them?
Right.
No, you show up, hold your head high, and you're there
You
for
find
the day.
you find a way to work through it, right?
You find a way to work through it.
it's-
It's not comfortable, it's not happy, it's not any of those things.
But it's character building.
Yes.
And those are some of the things that kids today lack, because they're never pressured to do that piece. And
Right.
Well, we're definitely in a situation where parents are sucked into the we have to be a certain way. Our
Yep.
kids have to be a certain way. Our kids have to go to a certain school. They have to have a certain
but
grade.
at
They
10
have
years
to be
old,
right.
we shouldn't be worrying about college for
Right,
them.
absolutely, right.
Can we just meet them where they are right then and there?
Always
Do they need to
meet them where
spend
they are.
12 months out of the year playing a sport because you want them to get a scholarship in that sport?
Right.
Let them follow their
But it's also
passion
the-
with balance.
Right, but it's also the sporting,
Absolutely.
you know, they're just to blame, right? Like, you were an athlete, I was an athlete,
No.
you know, but
Dance,
I mean,
and
there
dance.
was a shutdown point in our lives where it happened, and there wasn't this need. And you know, a lot of people are making a lot of money off of that more is better or something like
More is
that.
better. You need pitching lessons because
You need-
you're 9 years old. We have to get you
Right.
developed so that
At
you're
our
on.
kids'
Yeah.
emotional expense.
Yes.
So what's more important? How they are playing football and the possibility that they're going to be a pro football player, which is really, really slim.
Slim to none.
Or,
And Slim left the room.
Or their emotional
Yeah.
well-being, because that is the basis of everything. And if you don't have that, doesn't matter how you are
But
at
it's also
football. It
the-
doesn't matter what your grades are like.
It's also the
Correct.
connection we make to why we do things today as a society, right?
Mm-hmm.
You played soccer because you love the sport and you liked your teammates
Right.
and you liked the camaraderie that happened with doing
Absolutely.
that. It taught you how to team build. It taught you how to rely on people. There
Right.
were so many lessons that were there.
Absolutely.
A lot of kids today, I don't feel like invest in sports because of those reasons. They invest in sports for the vehicle that it will use and be to bring them to where they need to go. So even the second end gain is different with our kids today for why they do things. Honestly, like I hear some parents say, I'm not going to have him do that because there are more scholarships in lacrosse than there are for this sport. And I say, what sport does he like better though?
Yes.
Because shouldn't it be about what he gets
Yes.
personally out of the experience than
what we want.
no, but it's the vehicle. So it's almost like we're assigning a different meaning to even why we do things when we're little.
Absolutely.
You know, it's
So
sad.
how you feel and what brings you happiness is unimportant.
Right.
It's what is going to create
So
this for
I
you.
tell parents
And that's-
all of the time, when we decide to have children, it's for us, right? They're for us. They're little babies. We hold them. They're for us.
And they're really cute.
Yeah, and we love every minute of it, right? As they grow, their life is for them. It's no longer for us. They're not living their life to make us happy. They have to live their lives to make themselves happy. And that gets very, very murky. Certain areas, because we do have visions and dreams of what we want our kids to be like, and
Of
sometimes
course.
it doesn't fit,
But guess
right?
what?
If it
I
doesn't
never
fit,
think
it doesn't fit. We
That
have
I
to
would
go
ever
with it.
have to say, I just wish that my wish for all children is that they get out of high school alive.
Right.
And that's what I have to say now,
Right.
today. And I'll say it to parents, because if you neglect to address your child's, drinking and drugging, they may not, who cares what they get on the SATs if they're dead? Because dead kids really
Absolutely.
don't test well
Right.
or play sports well.
True.
So let's just be real as to, and if they go to a community school for 2 years, why is that bad?
Right. Right.
Why is that
Right,
bad?
right.
If they're emotionally not ready to take on,
Once again,
Being
be
awake.
where they are.
be where they are.
Right.
Be where they are, be where your pocketbook is, because you certainly don't have to take on the expense
Right.
of all of that.
Right.
Just, it's simplify.
Right.
It really is simplify.
Right.
But so important to meet them where they are.
And absolutely, and also empower them, not fix everything and resolve
You
everything.
can't
for
fix
them.
right.
I give this example, so it's an example with my daughter, and believe me, I've made a lot of mistakes.
We all make
Right?
mistakes.
I haven't, always done the right thing, but it was a pivotal moment for her and for me, where she was being bullied in 8th grade by one of her closest friends. Her close friend started telling her not to go hang out with other people, stay with me. She started telling her how to dress. She started telling her how to act. She was calling her names. She was, calling her a nerd, all of these things. My daughter was coming home every day crying. And one of the resolutions, as I was telling other people, was like, go to the school, go to the kid's parents, go to the kid, go all this external stuff that I really don't know if I could control, right?
Right.
So instead, I could tell my daughter also, you're not allowed to see her,
Correct.
right? But instead I sat down with my daughter and I said, let me ask you, what is a friend?
Good question.
And what do you want a friend to be like? And she sat and she thought about it, and she named some things: someone that you can trust, someone that has your back, likes you. And I said, is that what you're experiencing with this girl? And we let it be. And a few days later, she came to me and she said, I don't want to be her friend anymore. She said, she's calling me a nerd, and if I want to be a nerd, I want to be a nerd.
And thank God she saw that.
Yes.
But how
and
many
sh-
kids
but-
fall into the other trap?
Right. So, but it was I guided her,
Yes.
right, into thinking a certain way, right?
Right.
But thinking about it, and it was her own decision that she made, and it was empowering her. So the next time she's in a situation like that, she can do the same thing. What do I want?
Exactly. She can say, what do I want?
She's not, Mom.
Does this person help me or hurt
Right.
me?
And she's not like, Mom, what should I do? Mom, can you take care
Right.
of it? Right?
No, we can't fix things
So
for them all the time.
feeling empowered is another thing that's so important to ward off
Well, that's
some
those,
of this
right?
pain.
Or protective
and
factors.
yes.
It is protective factors, and
Right.
we need to spend more time building up and focusing on kind of not the deficiencies but the assets, because a lot of times
Yeah. Oh,
kids
absolutely.
have things that make them different but they're actually assets. So if we could teach children that the same isn't always the right way, and if different isn't always the wrong way, and we could empower them to really self-identify and be okay with who they are.
Wouldn't it be great? But when kids are little, they do that Star of the Week. I think they still do it.
Yes,
But
right.
what makes you? I would love for teachers just to say, what makes you different than anybody else in
Right.
this room?
Right.
And let's celebrate.
What are you
that.
proud of
Right.
that makes you different, right? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I gotta say, a lot of times when we were kids, it was like Star of the Week, and it would be self-directed. So in the younger grades now, at least in my district, a lot of the kids are grouped, and they sit in like clusters of like 4 or 5 kids. So they actually get start what table. So they have to learn how to work together as a group to actually get something. So it teaches team building skills and a whole
Right.
bunch of different things, which I love.
Right. Yes.
Because then you have to learn to kind of
Work
work
with
with
each
who
other.
you get, and you don't get to choose who you get either, which I think is pretty cool. So there are some
Except when that one person in the group doesn't do their job, and you're
Oh, and everybody's
really angry.
experienced
Yes.
that.
well, maybe you could learn some, leadership skills at a young age, and you can learn how to
Yeah,
turn that around.
absolutely,
And what challenges are you having? How can we get them to buy in, or learning how to identify that?
How about even communicating that to
Right.
the other person instead of going to your other friends and just talking about
Yeah.
how this person
Exactly.
isn't contributing, right?
So like our district does like a really great job at a whole bunch of different things, and
They do. They I would say Northport, East
Yes.
Northport
They
is very
do.
progressive.
They are progressive
in their thinking.
Yes.
My son is in 5th grade, and they're doing the growth mindset, which teaches them it's an empowerment tool that helps them identify, like for the week or something like that, something that they want to attest to. So it's actually teaching them to take responsibility for a thought and a feeling, and then put an action behind it, which I think is really, really
That's
great.
great.
Right.
So the districts are moving towards more mindfulness things, and the social
Not at a
emotion-
rate
No.
Not at
that
the
I
rate
think
that
needs to be
addiction is
addressed.
happening.
It's true, but
Because
we're
we're 10 years behind the curve here.
still fragmenting wellness when it should be like a continuum, right?
Yes.
So we should be able to look at the different areas of our life and make it a whole, not kind of just, well, we need to make this better and then we're okay, right?
Right.
We still need to talk about all the different areas.
But when we do that with young kids, that leads to a different mindset of thinking, period.
Yeah.
Now let's forget drugs and alcohol. Let's forget that.
Yeah.
That leads them to think differently, that they're just going to be better people.
Yes.
Period. So, you know, when we teach them that sports and exercise are good for you, for endorphins, to feel better, and for health, to keep your weight down, to this, we're teaching them.
Right.
We're not, you know, we're not doing it for fun.
It's so interesting because all of the stuff that we need to teach them, they're going to use their whole lives way more than algebra.
Exactly.
And I get why we need algebra or why we
Absolutely.
need, you know, I'm not trying to say that we don't need to learn those things, but the focus is just.
There is a book, though. I'm
Off.
going to get this in. Everything you needed to know you learned in kindergarten.
It's true.
Because it's true.
Right.
Thank you for joining us this week. We're actually going to be back right now, so it's going to be a continuum. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
My age is 18 years old and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin, I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had like aspirations of going to like an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within like a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to want to change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, like, you know, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that, like, I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, you know, it really does help you in life and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more. And that was from the help of Outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to peer support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has got a lot better. Because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
Welcome back to Resolutions for Recovery. And we are doing really a 2-hour show here because this is a very important topic. You know, we can dwell on lives lost, which is so important to do, and to recognize that here on Long Island, we are losing 3 people every 2 days. And it's an unacceptable fact. But how do we change that? Because I'm all about how do we change that? Because we have to increase how we do treatment and all those dynamics, but we really have to do a lot more prevention, a lot more family wellness, and that's really what I like to concentrate on, family wellness. Because once a family is well, the person that struggles with the disease, if there's a person struggling, because this goes for any family, a healthy family is a well family is just going to come forward into the world to the best of their abilities. And what else do we want for our children, right? So we're back with Millie and Nicole.
Hi.
And Nicole is a program coordinator, not a clinical coordinator at Central Nassau Guidance.
Thank you.
Millie still remains a therapist.
Yeah.
And an
Nothing's
attorney,
changed, yes.
and a mom, so you wear many different hats. So you can
Yes.
see this. You know, for me, always, when we engage the family, we're going to have a different outcome.
Right.
And I went to Albany for Wednesday, and I addressed with Steve Hansen, who is the Arlene Sanchez's deputy commissioner
Right.
of OASIS, and I got to speak to about 40 directors.
Wow.
And the family program has been removed from treatment, but it's about engaging the family again.
Absolutely.
It's always going to be about engaging the family. Because if someone had said to me, because this was my experience with treatment, okay, we'll let you know when he's going to be discharged. Okay.
Right.
Is there something, no, you've been, you're criticized for what you didn't do.
Right.
Instead of giving me directions as to what we should be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So my point to treatment folks is sit down with the family right off the bat. And if
Right.
someone, I'll use myself always as the example, had said, Linda, you're an integral part of Thomas's recovery. His recovery is going to last his lifetime and always will need to be addressed.
Right.
We need you here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Right.
We're going to educate you and we're going to give you strategies and we're going to do this for you. We need you to bring in Jennifer and Andrew.
Right.
And we're going to address what they need as siblings. And then we'll get the family together
Right.
with the affected person and
Right.
we'll work on that so when we send you home, nobody's walking on eggshells,
Right.
and you have a better way to communicate. I would have said, I'm all in.
Right.
When is my first class?
Right.
So as
Or they're
Right.
going to say, this is not my problem. That's their problem.
Which happens a lot.
Exactly. But as a treatment professional, I'm going to be able to say, we can't send
Right.
this person back to their home life because it's not going to be conducive for their recovery.
Right.
So I've answered a question right off the bat. Family involved,
Yeah.
family not involved.
And where do I go?
And where do
with
they
that?
go after this?
Right.
So as you're talking, all I keep on thinking about is this image that we use when we do coalition work, right? Because it's almost basically the same, just at a different level. So we talk about the fish in the pond. So
Right.
if the family unit is the pond
Right.
and the person who's active is the fish, if you don't help fix the pond, no matter whether or not you take the fish out and make it better and put it back, the environment that it's going into will never change, and the fish will just still remain sick, and so will the pond. We know that sometimes we fix family systems, and that doesn't necessarily fix the fish, right? But
Correct.
it does give a better opportunity
Opportunity.
for it to happen.
The fish, or the affected person,
Yeah.
when they can no longer manipulate their home life,
Of course.
they are going to be much more apt to get backed into a corner
Yeah.
to say, you know what, I give up.
Right.
Right. I think one thing that you kind of alluded to earlier is that sometimes families don't get involved and say it's not my problem because they don't want to see it because they're afraid it's a reflection on them and that it's
Correct.
about blame. None of this is ever about blame. Should it ever be about blame? We are all doing what we can with what we know at that time.
At any given point
Right.
in time.
No matter what. That's a given.
You
Right?
you do the best you can at the moment in time that you are. You
Right.
can look back 5 weeks later, 5 years later, and say, "Oh, I would have handled that differently."
Right.
But you have
Right.
life experience
Right.
And
that would cause you to make a different decision.
Right. And instead of feeling guilty about that, feel happy that you have moved on, progressed. You've
Right.
progressed
And
and
you're
you've
not gonna
learned
make
something.
that mistake again.
Again, right. So yeah, there's so much about that, trying to get that message to parents that it's okay to to get involved and to take a look at this, and that there's nothing about blame. There've been so many times where I know parents, and I think you have said this yourself, which is I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know, right? And how would you know?
How would you know? And quite honestly, back then too, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I thought after 28 days he was coming out and he was going to be okay.
Right.
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 Because nobody explained to me
Right.
that he wasn't going to be okay,
Uh-huh.
that this was going to be, a progression
Right.
for the rest of his life. Nobody
Right.
explained
Right.
recovery. Nobody explained the disease to me.
Right. So
So I
that's
said, okay, so we
Right.
have to stop him from doing this.
right.
Well, that's what I thought it was.
Right.
Right.
Right. So yeah, parent involvement, family involvement is so.
But there's also
crucial.
I feel like there's still such,
Stigma.
it's the stigma.
It
I
is.
mean, we've done a lot to open the language barriers, and, we've filtered a lot of money into education, and, we're not quiet about it at all.
No, we're not.
It's really
Definitely not.
It's trying to change the stigma around it, and what that means and why it still exists. Like why people think it's a moral failing. Why, we do all these things to safeguard our kids, to protect them. We try to use proper language. We put up gates. We teach them to brush their teeth for hygiene. We do all these different things. No one's gonna talk negatively about you if you do that. But, that, they talk to their kids about that. I mean,
Right.
I did a community.
It's like talking to your kids about sex.
I know, it's the
Right.
weirdest.
Oh,
Does
it
that mean
absolutely
it's
is.
never going to happen?
Right.
That they're not thinking about it?
People are afraid if you talk about it, they're gonna
Do
do
it.
it. Right.
Or if you, say, and if you are going to do it, use, appropriate birth control.
Right.
Well, then now you've given the green light. No, you've educated them that, well, I hope you're not going to make that decision.
Right.
And I
Right.
hope that you decide to wait.
But
if you don't,
Right. So you talk about balance there.
Correct.
Right. So when they're younger, you hope that you do a lot of prevention work and talk and education around healthy decisions, healthy choices, empowerment, self-esteem work and stuff like that. But there is a time of their lives where, not that it's okay, but it's appropriate for them to engage in risky behaviors. It's just the life cycles. I did it, you did it, Millie did it. And what that looks like is different to every kid.
correct.
So then, you talk about doing like harm reduction models, and what does that look like, and how can you educate your kid for safety? Because, we know that they may engage, they may try. We can do deterrence all we want. We hope that they make good choices, but we understand that they may not. And we have to be able to have a continuous conversation and change the language, you know, to be appropriate to meet them where they're at and what they're going on and what they're experiencing. So I think it's making parents comfortable in that space.
I think it's also, when you talk about all of that,
Yeah.
is being part of being a parent is where are they going? You know, we do all this work during the week. You need to get good grades. I'm going to bring you to dance, this, that. You know, you orchestrate the week, and then on Friday nights, I'll let them go there. That's okay. It's all right. Why do you feel that it's okay to let your guard down? It's not okay. Where are you
Exhausted,
going?
probably,
Who are you
right.
going with?
Right.
Right.
And, you know, are the parents going to be home? These
Right.
are all questions that
Absolutely.
you know what? Your kid's going to give you a hard time on the answers to.
Right.
And when they give you a hard time on the answers, it's probably means because on the other side, it's not going to be a good
Right.
experience.
Right. And sometimes they might not give you a hard time if the communication is already set.
Correct.
That has to start from day one.
And that was really the point of my.
Yeah.
So as
you
kids
can't all of a sudden at
move,
17 start to try to get
Right.
involved. You know,
Right.
when they're 17, try to get involved.
when a kid
Yeah.
is thinking about a risky behavior, and even if they decide to take a sip of something or do something, that it's okay when they come home and they see you, because you have this relationship that they're going to look at you and they're going to think that you're looking right through them anyway.
Right.
So I found that sometimes, like, you know, your kids are in a good space when they're able to be like, I dropped my daughter off at homecoming the other day. I was like, not, you know, high schooler, totally kind of, I'm like, how is this happening? And she was in the car with a whole bunch of girls. And I looked at her and I said, what are the rules? And she recited our family rules back to me in front of her
Oh,
friends.
you have family rules that
I
have been
do.
long established.
Wow.
There you go. So that's just, and we're not criticizing
No,
anybody.
I'm not,
No, no.
Because
but
nobody teaches
good
us as
thing. It's a
parents.
good thing.
Right?
But what I thought made me happy as a parent was that she was comfortable to recite them back. And then on the back
In
end
front of her
friends. And on the back end of it, maybe it would have inspired her friends to maybe go home if they don't have the same rules and say, hey, you know, she has family rules, and, you know, Milan, or she was okay with talking about them. Those type of things, because you never know who you're going to inspire, who you're going to impact, or what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like not being it's that stigma piece. Don't be embarrassed about how you choose to live your life or what the expectation is. Your children want you to have an expectation for them, not just book-wise, not just athletically-wise, but for safety-wise. Just-
Children, and I mean, Millie, you can probably speak better to this, but all kids love structure.
Yes.
They love to feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they want to know that my parents care about me.
Absolutely. Yes.
Or my grandparents, or whoever my caretaker is.
Right.
They look for that.
Right.
They yearn for that.
It makes them feel loved. Yeah.
Yes.
It makes them feel loved.
It makes them feel loved.
I give sometimes an analogy with parents, you know, of like if you're walking, if you ask a kid to walk a straight line, right, with their eyes closed, they're going to be all over. If you tell them to get there, they may not be able to get there. But if you put some boundaries up on the side and some walls, you will help them get there where they need to
But
know.
that's a great analogy.
Yeah. And
So kids still love structure.
Yes,
Yes.
right.
Humans are still humans.
Right.
So, you know, we've
Right.
given them structure. They took a nap at a certain time, you know, through their life. So why stop?
And it's flexibility too, because you have to
Absolutely.
give them the opportunity to
Grow.
gain
absolutely,
trust,
yeah.
Yes.
and how you do about
themselves.
prove themselves, and you have to be okay with establishing those layers. Like you wouldn't just. A good example, Anthony Ferrandino always says, you wouldn't just take your kid and tell him to cross the street, right?
Right.
You teach them how to do it.
Right.
So, and that's how, and then you watch them.
Right.
Right.
And then you feel comfortable, and you
then
take,
it's a process.
It's a process.
process.
Right, right.
So with everything in life, it's a process.
It's a
You said
process.
something interesting before when you said, my daughter, 13, dropping her home, how did I get here? So we've all experienced that, right? But sometimes two things. In our eyes, we think of them as babies.
Always.
And we have to remember that they're growing, and along with their growth has to become our growth. we have to grow along with them. We have to treat them differently than when they were
Absolutely.
5. So when they're 5, they say, why do I have to do it? And you say, because I said so. It's probably
At
not even great
23,
at 5. But yeah, you
you
can't
can't say
do
that.
that.
Right.
Right. You have to say, well, this is why. This is what we need. This is why. And we're all navigating something we've never done before.
Yeah.
This is hard for them and hard for us. So we have to give ourselves a break, but allow ourselves to be flexible and go with the flow.
When my
Yeah.
22-year-old was really going through a difficult time for him, and I knew, so it's kind of a personal thing, so I won't use the specifics. But I remember saying to Andrew, because I was upset for him and with him, and I said, it's like watching my 2-year-old cross the street, and I don't want to see you get hit by a car.
Right.
And his response to me was, have faith in the man that you raised, because
Right. Oh, yes.
I'm not going to get hit by
I
the
got that
truck.
too. Yeah. And that's nice. Right.
And that I was like, wow. well,
Right.
that just hit me in the head.
Right.
But still at 22, he's still my baby,
He
right?
is.
There always are babies, but
The word
now,
balance jumps in again.
The word balance jumps in. So now when he's discussed things with me,
Mm-hmm.
I discuss things as an adult, having had those life experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and then say, if you have more questions, let's talk about it. Or if you need me to show you a different
Mm-hmm.
way to get to your goal, I'll help you with that.
Right.
Or you're going to do it your way, and that's okay too.
It's funny. I think sometimes that children, because they're so much more intellectual,
So much more.
that they almost appreciate the conversation,
They're insightful too.
and they're a
They
lot
see
more
things.
insightful.
Very insightful.
So
They
if
don't
you-
have all the cloudy stuff that we
No,
have.
no,
Right?
they don't have all the hurt and the everything
They can
else.
say it just
that
like it is,
Life
boy.
experience in the way.
So it's a lot easier, or it's a lot better. Sometimes I get a better response, with my teenager when I often say to her, we're learning together, right? So,
Yes.
this is
absolutely.
new for me.
You've never been.
I've
the
never
parent
been
of,
a mom of a 13-year-old. You've
Correct.
never been a 13-year-old.
Right, and it's not that.
and we're going to fall forward to success.
Right.
Right.
And there has to be a give and take and an ebb and flow, and kind of just we need to work together and not against each other, because ultimately
Absolutely.
my end goal is your end goal, right? I want you to be able to get where you want to go and do what you need to do, and I also want you to feel, a big thing with kids is like respect. They
Yes.
really want to feel that you respect them and that you
100%,
trust them.
yeah.
It's a huge piece for them. And so sometimes when
Trust is
we
earned.
want it
Yeah.
too.
We want it too,
Respect,
but
right?
trust,
Yeah.
trust is earned.
And it goes
some-
back and forth.
Right.
Goes both
Sometimes
ways.
just having the extra conversation that is, sometimes not easy. It's not scripted.
But when all of these factors
Yeah.
are brought up together,
Right.
that at 13, if your daughter came home and
Yeah.
said, you know what, Mom, I did this and I'm so sorry that I did it, and I feel horrible, that there's a learning.
That's right.
Do
Absolutely.
you need to beat her up?
No.
You're right.
She's beating herself up.
Yeah.
Right.
I joke around that I've always told my kids, you can tell me anything. And sometimes
tell
I've
me that.
regretted it.
Didn't mean everything.
Especially when it's something about me.
Yeah.
Right? I other things too. But if they say, well, I don't like when you did this, and I've been in a situation where the first reaction is, that's not what I did, and the defense thing comes up.
Of course.
And then I take a step back and I think about it, and I think, first of all, I want them to be able to tell me this, whether I agree or not. And
Right.
second of all, they're usually right.
And it's
I
hard
need-
to
yes.
have the mirror held
Right?
up in front of you.
Right. But then that's growth.
That's
It's growth.
growth.
It's not about just getting stuck there and feeling bad.
And it's not
saying,
about-
oh,
Right.
okay, I'm going to do that differently from now on.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
Mom, don't talk to me like that,
Right.
because it's not effective with me.
Right. Right. This is what
Because
I need from
say
you.
that to people in my own life now. When you do that,
Right.
Shut off.
I turn off.
Right.
My defensive mechanism is going to come right back up.
Right. Right.
But if you said something like this way to me, I'm going to respond much differently.
right. Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
you may get the outcome that you want.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
But if you keep doing the same thing at me, I'm going to give you the same response every time.
right.
It's funny. We just started a youth coalition as
that's
part of our
great.
overall.
And they'll be on in a couple of weeks.
Yes, I can't wait. So we, tasted them and empowered them to make their own
amazing.
name and a hashtag for themselves, and they really did an awesome job. And
What is the
How
age
old?
of?
Yeah.
So the two leaders, I think, are 16 and 17. So one's a junior
Perfect.
and
Right.
one's a senior, and a couple of the other members are all filtering in within the same age range. And we actually have some kids that might even be in ninth grade that are coming up.
So a couple of years ago, Daryl St. George and Tammy Walsh came on
Right.
with a couple of their kids. And I didn't really want the teachers there, and we kind of shut them down, the kids and I did.
Well,
But I remember that when we went to break, that Daryl turned and looked at this one young man and said, "You said more tonight than you've said in the last 3 years." And he said, "Because she asked me."
Right.
What a
And
big
listened.
learning moment for the two adults in the room.
they're super excited.
If you don't give them
Yes.
give them the task, let them come up with how they're going to come up with the way that needs to be for the rest of their friends.
Yes.
Right? They're going to come up with the plan that meets their friends where they are. You can tweak it, but you got to kind of work with, it's like letting your 4-year-old make their bed and then say,
It's not right.
I want to fix that.
Yes.
Right.
And I still, to this day, remember my mother, who had 5 children, said, she made her bed, don't you dare go in there and make it again. I go,
Right.
but she goes, I know exactly what it looks like
Right.
because you made your bed the same exact way.
Right. But let
It
it
will
be.
get better
Yep.
as she gets older.
Let it be. Right.
Close the door.
So we wanted them to
Good
be.
advice.
We wanted them to be married to something that they could be proud of. It was important for us to teach them, leadership skills and say, okay, so this is yours. What do you want? What do you think will be the most impactful to your population? Because it's peer work. So they came up with a name for their coalition. It's One Life, and LIFE is an acronym, and it stands for Learn, Inspire, Fulfill, and Empower. And their hashtag's going to be One Life for Life, and they have their own logo, which I'll have them bring when they come, and they can talk about
know.
why they chose
they're
this.
amazing.
They're amazing.
They're
They're
amazing.
amazing.
We
So-
can learn from them.
from them.
Absolutely.
So, they are they're unbelievable. And they really nailed it. And it's overall wellness. So it's interesting when we talk about what is important to kids. They want the same things, and they want awareness and stuff around the same things that we do.
They also know that drugs and alcohol are bad.
Right.
We don't need to teach them that.
Totally.
Right. We don't need to
Pound it in their head.
Yes. So,
I've heard it all before. You know?
exactly.
But they also, I think one of the biggest pieces for kids is they don't know who else is choosing to be drug and alcohol free.
Right.
And we always come back to, where do I fit in?
Right.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
if I pick the wrong group, now what? Now what do I do?
Right.
And you don't know because, who you're friends
'Cause
with in 8th
nobody's-
grade, what
right.
the path is going to take when they're in 10th grade, you just don't know.
And you want an open door, right? So what if you have a kid that's really in an exploratory stage in their life, but they haven't really crossed over? What if they get connected with a group that's focusing on doing wellness things, and maybe that's what feeds their soul and they decide not to do it anymore?
Correct.
So sometimes it's going at it from a broader lens, because not every kid is the same. Not every kid is, doing bad things, but may be invested in the overall humanity piece of just existence, right?
Right.
So how do we engage all those people so they can learn to work together, inspire each other, and kind of build? So we're totally excited. They're excited.
That's great.
Yeah. If you
What
want to.
do- yeah, go ahead,
If you
sorry.
want to meet them, come to the color run. They'll be at the back end of the race,
Yeah,
and
I do want to meet them.
they'll
yeah.
be promoting their club, and I'm really proud of them.
The last letter is empower, right? And how empowered are they
Yes.
by doing this? How how much does that help their self-esteem?
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, they already have a very strong picture of themselves to be able to
do
stand
this.
there. And I think they can be the light to a lot of kids that are in the dark that are saying, wow, if I go there, she's not gonna, or he's not gonna make me feel inferior,
Right.
but it's gonna help me grow and develop.
Right. We're all looking for
We're all
something,
looking for something like
to make
that.
us feel like we're worth something, that we're doing
Absolutely.
something that is valuable, that we're valuable.
That we're valuable.
Right, that we're valuable. Their logo that they made up themselves is it's 3 people that are ultimately, it looks like they're sitting on a rope, and the center person is a color, and the people sitting beside them are different colors, but it's them bleeding into each other. So it's kind of very, it's just
Wow, that's heavy.
amazing.
That's heavy, but
so it's the
this is how our kids think today.
Yes, it's the responsibility piece, it's the compassion piece. It's just that we have the ability to not only impact but influence. So that's
We're
kind
all
of
connected.
and we're all connected. So I think that it's amazing how when you give children or teenagers the freedom to kind of just be,
Yeah.
right? How creative and appropriate, and they're like hands on, like their pulse is on it. They
But
hit it
So
at the
that
heart.
kids should be seen and not heard
Right.
out the window.
Yeah, out the
But
window.
they're also, these are kids that may still be involved in sports, may still be
Yep,
involved in
absolutely,
other things.
right.
And parents, we need to be open to the thought of, these kind of clubs and activities are important to spend time on.
Yes,
Oh,
it is.
absolutely.
Wellness
Mental
and
health.
interaction.
Mental health,
And,
wellness.
Right.
Inclusion.
Inclusion.
And how do we develop things that are community based for kids like that? Like, so a kid can feel that they can go or be a part of something, because ultimately that's all kids want, right? They want to feel attached to something. We were
Absolutely.
talking about that today. Our friends are friends, and we want to feel connected with other human beings. I mean, it's just
Well,
that's
they say the opposite of addiction is connection, right?
Yeah.
And it is what we're all looking for. You know?
It is what we're all looking
And
for,
we
without a
should
doubt.
not think that they're not just because they're little. That they're young. They're looking for it.
They're looking for the same things. They
Right.
all want
Very,
that
very
friend on the
much.
playground. You all had that friend in kindergarten that you held hands with,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Always.
Absolutely right.
And does that friend change through your lifetime? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be open to the change that's going to happen.
Right.
Right.
And most of the time you're lucky if you still have a friend from high school in your adult age.
Right.
Yes.
Very fortunate if you do.
Right.
Yes. I actually.
Got some from second grade.
I do too.
I have friends,
It's an
my
amazing
brother
thing.
that's closest in age to me, we probably have 15 people that we've known since we were born. It's kind of like creepy crazy.
It's special though.
It is very special.
Yeah,
but
really
but we
special.
still look at each other like sometimes you can still be that idiot from when you were 5
course,
years
that's
old.
the point.
That's the beauty of it.
You're making
They
me
accept
think.
you just as you are, and
You know,
that's what
it's-
we want. right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what everybody wants.
It's good for the heart.
Yeah.
That's what it's good for.
It's so amazing to have that one person that knows you
Yep.
forever. And you could not talk to them for 10 years and then pick up the phone and they're like, oh, all right, let's go to lunch.
Yes.
It's great.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to be right back after this message. And I think that Nicole won't be here, but Millie and I are going to actually have a very discussion about grief, which also has to happen, unfortunately, in my world.
Thanks for having me.
Yay! The color run
always
tomorrow,
great.
Northport, East Northport.
Fifth Avenue Elementary School.
Registration. What
Avenue,
time? What time?
9 a.m.
No, the race starts at 9.
Oh, 8 a.m. 8 a.m. Fifth Avenue
Yes,
Elementary School.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
My age is 18 years old, and my name is Evan.
My name is Sean, and I'm 19 years old.
My name is Justin. I'm 16.
My name is Angelica. I'm 18 years old.
Marijuana, and I was 13 years old.
Marijuana, and my age was 13.
The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, and I was 12 years old.
It was marijuana and I was 11 years old.
Yes, and that escalated to promethazine, lean.
I began to take pills like Xanax, Percocets.
I began using other substances such as pills and alcohol.
I then went on to cocaine and pills and quickly progressed to heroin. I was 13 years old when I first started using heroin. I had like aspirations of going to like an Ivy League school, and that quickly, within like a year or two, changed. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to school altogether eventually. All my friends were kind of just dropping me.
I started getting in trouble in school, eventually kicked out. I got in trouble with the law a lot.
I wasn't really hanging out with a lot of sober people, just people that use. I overdosed at 15. I've been at Outreach for 5 months. Outreach honestly really helps you. It shows that you're honestly worth something. And it's possible to become sober if you put in progress. But it's not just gonna be handed to you, you really have to want to change. Inpatient, you can't just leave. You stay here and you have to deal with it. That's what I feel like a lot of kids need.
In a long-term facility, the counselors get to know the resident better, and they get to actually work with them more than in a short-term 28-day facility. And it really gives kids a chance to work on themselves rather than being rushed through a program just to be thrown back into life, going back into the same old bad habits that they were doing before.
Coming in here, I couldn't believe how long I would have to be here, but after a couple months, like, you know, talking to counselors, I kind of came to the realization that, like, I need a lot of time and work to repair everything I've done.
The things that we get taught here, you know, it really does help you in life, and it gives you a different perspective. It's very important for a kid to have a family involvement in treatment so they don't think they're alone in this. We communicate on a better basis than how we used to. We understand each other more, and that was from the help of Outreach.
They come every Wednesday night for support group. They come to a group every other week.
They come to peer support group to discuss their problems also. My relationship honestly has got a lot better. Because I remember my mom used to never want to say anything to me because she would be scared of my reaction. I'm starting to realize in here, like, I really have to take advantage of the fact that I have her still.
When I was about 14 is when my parents realized that I had several different problems, such as behavioral issues, and the behavioral issues kind of stemmed from my drug use. I began caring less about myself and others. Outreach has really made me realize how important family is. If I was out of state in a program where my parents were not involved, I would have never been able to strengthen my relationship with them. My father told me that I've inspired him to make changes in his life, and that meant a lot to me. I've never heard my dad be inspired by something before, and I was just proud that it was me.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Resolutions for Recovery. So we really gave, I think, parents a great roadmap if you're open to listen to it.
Right.
You know, I think we all learn from each other, and again, never criticism or judgment. But if I knew then what I know now, maybe my world would be different, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know, but I will share the journey with other people,
Right.
if it helps.
Right, and we need to do what we can and what we know,
Yeah.
right, and learn and grow.
I think we need to support one another through some
100%.
really, you know, life is not easy,
No.
right?
Before, when Nicole mentioned stigma, I think underneath stigma, it's really fear, right? So.
Yeah. Always fear.
Yeah, fear is underneath so many things. But yeah, so when we do this not my kid thing,
Yeah.
right, we set ourselves up. And I tried to think about what that is, because it is fear, right? I know when I hear about someone, let's say my husband's age, having a heart attack and passing away, I start to think, well, did he smoke?
Right.
Was he overweight? I want to think that things were different so that I can say, not going to happen to my husband,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think that's instinctive, right? That we
It
want to
is.
feel safe.
You want to feel safe and
We don't want to walk
protected.
around thinking this
Right.
can happen any minute, any day, right? Denial can be kind of like a little comforting, right?
It is very comforting.
However, if it, so to the point where we're in so much denial that there is, he is smoking and is,
Overweight.
and not doing what he can,
To live a long, healthy, productive
right,
life.
to help himself, then the head's in the sand.
Right.
And if it's diabetes and you have it in your family, you pay attention to it.
You have
to
to.
sugar. You
Right.
you worry about it. You think about it. You should be on top of it. You can go, oh, not me.
If you have breast cancer in your family, are
You
you
get
not going
checked.
to do
Right.
self-check every month? Are you not going to go for a mammogram? You're
You're
going
not
to do
going
all
to
of
be
those things.
educated, right?
You're going to be all of those things.
So with the disease of addiction, to put our head in the sand because we don't want to see it is the worst thing to do, right? We need to
Always.
come out. So we can say not my kid, and I'm sure that you didn't think it was your kid.
I
Nobody
like to
thinks
look at
that.
it this way now.
Yeah.
And I think it's growing up as the youngest of 5 children, my parents always, it was, why not my kid? I
Right.
think when
absolutely.
I grew up, you were guilty, whether you did it or not.
Right, right.
That was the approach that they took.
Right.
So in today's world, if your child comes home with a bad grade, we yell at the teacher.
Right.
We don't hold the child accountable for not working to their potential.
Right.
We hold the teacher accountable.
Right.
So
And we're not realizing that we can't do
That's-
anything about the teacher
Correct.
most of the time.
And here's
Right.
here's the sheer fact of life. Your teacher, their teacher may not like your kid.
Well, you're going to hit a lot of people like that in
You're
life.
gonna have a lot of, but that's a teachable moment.
Absolutely.
Your teacher doesn't have to like you. You have to work to your full potential and do what the assignment asked for.
Right.
And give it 100%.
Absolutely.
Or at least 85%.
Absolutely.
But if you give it 50% and you expected an A,
Right.
that's not the teacher's fault.
Right, right.
So I think,
It's about looking inward
yes.
and saying, how can I grow? Any situation, as you said, is a teachable moment.
Right.
If you find out that your child went to a party where there was alcohol, teachable moment.
Correct.
Not look the other way, not think, oh, it's everybody else, it's not my kid. Use it all as a teachable moment and a moment for conversation.
It's always a moment for,
That's going
different
to make
commercials
big
come
difference.
on.
Yeah.
So I did some commercials for Walk FM, and I've had a tremendous amount of parents say, oh, I recognized your voice from the commercial, and they have a teachable moment every day when they're driving their kids to school.
Absolutely. I know sometimes with boys it's a lot harder to get them to talk and open up and tell you what's going on. And it's a great time in the car when
In
they're
the
maybe
car.
with a friend.
Right.
Or
when
they're
you're
out-
feeding them.
Yeah, you're-
Feeding boys, since I have 2 sons, always
Absolutely.
feeding them
It
was
worked,
a
yeah.
great opportunity for conversation.
Right. Absolutely. So let's do that. Let's all talk about the hard stuff, the stuff that we might be uncomfortable with, but it's there.
But you can
and not
have
talking about it doesn't make it
a
go
minute
away.
of a teachable moment and then let it go.
Absolutely.
Because those are seeds that you drop,
Absolutely.
and then you go back and
Right.
you water them.
Right.
When that moment appears again.
Right. So we're not talking about, let's say, with sex, one birds and the bees conversation.
No.
That's it, done. Never talk about
Right.
it again. It's about talking about it little by little, right? Over
Exactly.
life, right?
And when you see, kids go in spurts too.
Right.
So when you see a very hot and heavy relationship forming,
Right.
you may want to
Right, might be
ask
the
some
time.
questions,
Right.
And prepare them
Absolutely.
and
Right.
yourselves. But
And
when
yourself.
but when you start to see, why wouldn't you call and make sure the parents are going to be home at a house party?
Right.
And why wouldn't you call and say, what's your policy at the house? You know, you're going to be checking their bags for alcohol?
Right.
Is there going to be, you know?
Right.
And if you have a parent on the other end of the phone go, oh, don't worry about a thing. We're here. So they'll be drinking here. We won't let anybody drive.
Oh, yeah,
or,
that's a thing,
you know,
right?
But you need to know that.
Absolutely. Right.
So don't be naive to think that all parents think like you.
Right.
And don't be naive not to ask the questions.
Right.
Because you feel that you may upset them.
Absolutely. Inquire, ask questions, learn yourself.
You wouldn't drop your kid off to a daycare.
Right.
So, you know, they're still your
Without-
kid. They may,
without knowing, yeah.
You know, you wouldn't drop your kid off to a daycare to a woman sitting on a park bench, you know, or at a bus station and say, yeah, I'm going to bring them home.
Right.
You would go to their home and see what
Right.
the environment was like.
Right.
You need to always go and see what the environment's going to be like.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, kids want to have some secrets.
Right. Oh, definitely.
And they want to push the box.
Right.
They want to push their boundaries and
Right.
expand their world.
I always say, I read this in a book. It's called How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen and Listen So Your Kids Will Talk. And then there's an adolescent version or your teen version. And it was saying, let's say your rule is that, you know, can't go to a house party that's where there's alcohol served. So you do all the work that you're saying, you
Right.
research it, you find out what's going on. And then instead of just going to your child and saying, no, absolutely not, that's it. It's, why not have a conversation? Why not say to the child, so tell me, why do you want to go to the party? What's going on? You know, is it because who's going to be there? What do you think might happen if you don't go? What are you worried about if you don't go? You know, you have a whole conversation. You say, I remember that. Oh, I didn't feel like I was going to fit in either. I get it. You know, and
Right,
this is a
meeting them
really, really
where
hard
they are.
time.
Yes.
But you're still not going to go.
Right. But you're still
right,
not going to go.
But you've given them a voice.
Exactly.
You've listened. You've heard them. You've validated them, and then
and then
you have
said,
your rule.
you know, as your mom,
right, I still
have
can't.
to keep you safe.
Right,
So I
absolutely.
can't condone this because once you've condoned that,
Right, right,
the boundaries get really big.
right, right. And I'm not saying they're not going to be unhappy that you still have the same answer. Right? The no.
Correct.
But they're going to feel a little bit better because they've been heard. It's if you know, if you have a boss and you want to get a raise, right? If you walk into your boss and you say, I want a raise, and they just say, nope, can't get it, that's it, bye, you're going to feel pretty terrible.
Right.
But if your boss says, I would love to give it to you, I think you're doing great work, I think, you know, I think
Right.
you're fantastic, I still can't.
I can't, there's no money in the
Right.
budget, there's going to be reasons.
This is the reason, right? Then you walk away feeling still disappointed you didn't get the raise,
Exactly.
but much better.
But much
You
better
can
about
accept
yourself.
It more, right?
Correct.
So that's what we need to do.
It's
with our
the
kids.
same thing. You know, when you know the reason behind it, you know, and while we're talking about that, empowering your kid to say, well, you can go to the party. Just hold a red cup with water in it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you need to really think about the message that you're saying.
Absolutely. Right. Because you're basically saying that
It's okay.
Right.
And it's okay to be
you want
deceitful.
to be cool.
Right.
To drink, and that's what coolness is, right? And you know that the giving off this
Better
image
to
is the idea.
empower them to say, you know what, you know, now you're 17 or 18, you're a senior. Obviously, you know, we've done the best we can with you. I would prefer you don't go to that party.
Right.
And if you do decide to go to that party, I would want you to be the one to stand up and say, I don't drink. I don't think this is a good idea. And I'm good with that. And if you're not good with me, I'll leave.
Right. Right.
Because now you've created this human
Absolutely.
that feels very comfortable in their skin
Right. Right. Right.
and still has that same message.
Absolutely. Right.
So, you know, the legal age is 21. And when we as parents give the green light prior to
at
that,
15, right? 13. You know, yeah, we're giving wrong message.
wrong message. Just the wrong message.
And wrong message, and also the brain development issue
Yeah.
is huge.
You know, we know better and we have to do better.
Right.
We didn't have all this research when we were young.
Right. Right.
And that's the God's honest truth. And by the grace of God, most of us came through it okay.
Right.
We also didn't take tampons, soak them in grain alcohol, and girls put them where girls put them, and boys put them, yes, where boys put them.
Right. Right.
We didn't do that when we were young. Or do an eye bath with alcohol for the quickest absorption
Right.
into a mucous membrane. And anyone can believe
Intense. Wow. Right.
that this isn't happening, but this is truly what's happening.
Right.
Their breath doesn't smell, they can be
Right.
drunk, they can
Right.
be all of these
Right.
things and experiencing school.
Right. Wow.
They can be vaping and waxing and high as a kite in school,
Right.
and you don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. All right. So
But
the communication,
All
and
of
talking
the
and
alcohol
knowing-
in the
Wow.
leads to blindness,
Right.
and the other things lead to sterility.
Right.
And certainly, you know, your colon isn't really going to be happy
Right.
experiencing all of that.
Right. Ultimately, alcohol, our body doesn't want in general.
Correct.
Definitely doesn't want it
So
in
there are
that way.
things going
Yeah.
on in your adolescents' lives that you need to be aware of and say, why not my kid?
Right.
What have I done to prepare them to say no to the things in the world that are coming against them?
And we can't follow them around
No.
every minute of the day. We can't control everything they do. They are going to want to have secrets and not tell us everything.
Correct.
We have to accept that. But we
And
have to
embrace
give
that.
them, yes. And we have to give them, though, the power, help them feel empowered so that they can stand up for
You know,
themselves.
and when you teach a kid the science behind why they shouldn't drink,
Right.
now you've given them some knowledge.
Uh-huh.
and a
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power,
Right.
and
Right.
let them be smart.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
They may make that decision because once you've planted that seed,
Mm-hmm.
that statement can't be unsaid in their brain.
Right. How great it is when you can just kind of let them go and know that they've got the tools.
Yeah,
They
they need the tools.
Yes, right.
You know, so I do want to get in some grief
Okay, yes.
with you because I'm sure you're seeing, certainly as the clinical coordinator for FIST,
And in my practice.
yeah, and in your practice now.
Mm-hmm.
So you've seen exponentially this hit your practice
Right.
from
Where it had not.
from kids that just have some issues to all kids having some issues dealing
yes.
in the world that they're dealing
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
And now-
Younger and younger.
in, and now grief coming at you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I've, my specialty is in grief. Although it is partially my specialty, but it's really working with adolescents. And but I can't not see a family that isn't affected nowadays. So
Isn't that something? So you see siblings, if you're dealing with the adolescents
So-
who have lost a sibling.
I have kids that people are in recovery, people that lost friends. Now I am seeing some moms that have lost their sons. It's not the world that we were living in, 5 years ago.
Correct.
It's bleeding into just everything.
Everything.
Right.
Everything.
So your head in the sand. It's going to have to come
So
out.
that parent that deals with the death of a child and then has to go to work.
Right.
How do you show up and work?
Right.
When you have that.
Right.
Because a piece of your soul is missing.
And the
A
thing.
piece of your very being
Yes,
is
of
missing.
you, right?
Yeah.
So, one thing that's still, I guess, surprising me, and one of the reasons that FIST is in existence, is that people are still dealing with this alone.
Yeah.
So, you have a parent that lost their child, and I'll say, do you know anybody else that's been through this? No. Because they've kept it quiet, they're ashamed, half the family still doesn't know. What the reason is. There's just still so much of the stigma. So what's so great about what FIST does
Yeah.
is that I can call you
Yes.
or
Or
another,
any of the moms.
any of the moms, and they will be quick to call that person and say, I get it.
Yeah.
And I know that that helps more than...
It helps, you know, for me, when I deal with, you know, sometimes there's a cry that a mother has
I remember you saying. Right.
that, because I can remember myself with that cry.
Right.
But holding somebody
Doesn't
who's
sound like
crying
a good
like
cry,
that,
right.
it's not human, that
Right,
cry.
right.
It's not human. And I think in the Bible, they refer to it as wailing.
Uh-huh.
And it's everything in your body that
Right.
is just screaming.
Right.
So being a mom that's, you know, it's a difficult place to be, but I choose to be there
Right.
because somebody needs to be there.
Right. And it's amazing what you do, and it's amazing what the moms do, because it can reopen
But
up
for
stuff for
all
you guys.
the moms, so we're talking about a lot of changes going on in my world, you know.
Yes.
Deciding to sell, you know, so a little backdrop, you know, since Thomas's death, coming home after work, those first few months, I loved being in my house. It was my safe zone.
Right.
I shut off from the outside world and I just needed to be, simply be.
Right.
Sit and be quiet, sit and cry, sit and look at photographs, just sit.
Right.
Because you have to sit in the grief.
Right.
It doesn't go away magically.
Right.
There are no stages to this grief.
Right. Yes. Right.
Because if a therapist ever wants to say to a grieving parent, there are stages to your grief, there are no stages to your grief.
Right. It's all over the place.
It's all over the place, and it's going to be all over the place for the rest of your life.
Forever. Right.
Forever.
Right.
So over the past 5 years, I have come to realize that my safe place isn't my house. My safe place is me.
Right.
I can deal with what I have to deal with.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that I still grieve,
Of course. Right.
but it's knowing, you know what, Linda, you gotta sit in this right now
Right.
and let it pass. And it does pass.
That's the only way.
It's the only way. And saying that to other parents who wanna all of a sudden, I'm gonna go out and talk about this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. You're running from your grief.
Right. Right.
There's plenty of time to do all of that, but if you are not the best person that you can be for yourself,
Right. No good to anybody.
you're no good to anybody else.
Right.
And moms are still, probably not the best thing to say, but I think it's still a true statement. Moms are still the heart of the family.
Right. Uh-huh.
They're the heart of the family.
Pretty strong and
So
powerful
when
thing.
mom
a
isn't
mom is.
okay,
Yes.
nobody's okay.
Right. Right.
Because I remember saying to my 2 other children who were grieving
Right.
intensely for their brother and saying to them, I know you're grieving. I know you are. But that was part of me. Your brother, as you are part of me.
Right.
And I can't help you right now.
Right.
I can't.
Because you're doing your own.
I can sit and hug you. We can hug each other. But I can't get you out of this
Right.
any faster than I can get out of this.
it. Right. Yeah.
You know,
I have
and
so-
being okay with that.
Right. I have so many clients that come in and they're trying to avoid all the bad feelings. Now, I'm not just talking about grief. I'm talking about anger or sadness. You know, I see so many people that can talk about a really, really rough time without being connected to it emotionally. And I say, where is that? And they're like,
Right.
I've got it somewhere. But sooner or later, it's not going to stay where it is, and it's going to come out, and it's going to have a negative effect.
Yes.
Whether it's that you're starting to yell at everybody else and their brother, or whether you get physically sick, you cannot push your emotions down. You need
Physically
to sit.
overeat,
Yes, absolutely.
eat yourself to sickness.
Right.
Maybe
Start
turn.
drinking yourself, right? So it's really hard to let people understand that sitting with the bad stuff is the way through it. And with grief, we want to avoid that more than anything. If you think back on the hardest emotion, that's it,
That's it.
right? Can't think of something that's harder to deal with. So
You know, in dealing with mom and dad's, your
Yeah.
parents'
Yes.
death, is expected in your
right,
lifetime.
absolutely, right.
So
And it's
a
hard
different-
enough.
That's hard enough.
Right, but
And
if
it
it's
is
your
hard
child,
But when it's your child,
Right.
there is
Right.
nothing.
Right. So, I always say go with it, don't force it, but
Don't
don't
fight
hold it
it.
back. Yeah.
Don't fight it.
Right. Because sometimes maybe you're not quite ready, you know?
Right.
So you don't want to say, I'm supposed to get through this. I got to go. I have to feel this. I better
There's
feel
no
this.
pushing through
Right.
anything.
Right. It's just you have
It will.
to.
It will show
Oh,
up
yes.
when the time for it to show up is.
Right. And what the families and moms and you do for FIST is amazing. I mean, just you sitting here and talking about this
Yeah.
now is helping people. It's amazing. The support I was describing to someone the other day, it's like a support, like
It's a net. Yep.
underneath. So that is just needed through something like
Yeah.
this. It's just needed. But it's also so important for everybody to have their own self-care.
Self-care, and I've seen an awful lot of parents that still just deny that.
Right.
You know, I thankfully
Right.
have always kind of been a wellness type person.
Yes, yeah.
So I do.
know you like your yoga.
I love my yoga, and that's my moving meditation.
Right, I love
That's
it too.
my time just to be quiet and just to concentrate on whatever I want to concentrate.
Right,
And I've cried through yoga
So have I.
classes. I've cried through Shavasana at the end when you're resting.
Yep.
And that's great because
Right.
your cells
It's needed. Yeah.
need to get rid of grief. You know, when you
Absolutely.
cry, that's toxins literally coming out of
Leave it-
your body.
yes, right, absolutely.
So sweat and do all of those things. But that meditation, that ability to, I know, so we're coming up to the holidays again.
Right.
So I mentioned to you guys off camera before, I'm getting ready. I'm going to do probably my 3-week cleanse.
Right.
And go towards veganism.
Yes,
And I don't do it to go towards veganism so much as I do it as a ritual because it keeps me focused on me.
Right,
Because when you come to the holidays, there's that pit
right.
that anybody, the holidays suck for most people in general.
I was gonna say.
They don't bring joy to everybody.
Right. Everybody acts like it's
This happy,
once again the
perfect
face.
time of the
yeah,
year.
yeah. Uh-huh.
It's not always. So for me, missing my son yet again for another Thanksgiving or another Halloween to watch my little ones get dressed up and him not be there and Uncle
Right.
Tom not be there,
Right.
that brings a certain, so I can hit it and go into the pit,
Right.
or I can hit it and do what's best for me.
Right.
So keep me well, because grief affects your immune system.
Right. Oh,
It's going to
absolutely.
keep me out of work, keep me from earning a living, keeping me from being my best.
Right.
So how do I empower myself
Right.
and be kind to myself?
Absolutely.
So if there's a Christmas party that may include an awful lot of young people, maybe say Thomas's age, is that a good thing for me to go to or a bad thing? And if
Right.
I say no,
Right.
is that okay? Yeah, you're damn right it's okay.
Absolutely.
Because it's okay for me. So expectations of other people of what they think I should do,
Right.
I don't care about.
Right. That's hard for a lot of people.
It's a lot for a heart of people. And I
Right?
know when people go to wakes for other young people that have been lost,
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, I know. I remember you telling me, right?
I don't because it triggers something in me that I don't need to go back to.
And
And I don't go
100%
to
okay.
wakes for old people either.
Right.
I just don't go.
Got it. Well, it's 100% okay
And it's okay.
because you have to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Can I go and see that family 2 weeks later when they're really going to need somebody?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. That's pretty powerful what
That's-
you do for sure. Right.
But it's just knowing
what's right
and knowing
for you.
what's right for me.
Yeah.
And
And I
knowing-
liked when you said before about like you're going like this and then there's a drop off. What came to my mind is what does that drop off look like? Because it can look so different to different people where you start to feel something comes up and you may not even realize it's grief.
Yeah.
You might think it's something else.
You might think you're getting sick. You might think
Right. Even
my
if you're just
job is
angry all the
bother.
time, right? It's because of this person and that person. But a lot of times that's not what it is. It's the grief coming out in another way. Just it's basically telling you you need to feel this.
Yeah.
You know?
But I love the when you're pointing the finger, so you can say
Okay.
it's this, this, this. These three fingers still point
Yes.
back at me.
Right. So always look inward.
Always look inward before you look outward. Because I can't control everything outward.
Right.
But I can control me and how I handle a situation.
Right.
And truly, if it is of somebody that you work with or other outside forces, I need to show up different.
Right.
So I don't have that response.
Right, absolutely.
But if it's grief, then I need to say, I really miss Thomas today.
Right.
Because, you know, on the 28th of October is his half birthday.
Right.
You know, so that's how did we always measure when they were little, right?
Always the half birthday.
6 months, 12 months,
Right.
18 months.
Right.
You know, it was
Yep,
always that
always,
half
always,
birthday.
yeah.
So we still do that.
Right.
Still do that.
Right. Yeah.
And that's okay.
How could you not? Right?
How can you not?
Right.
How can you not embrace all of that?
Right.
You know, and seeing kids my son's age, like going to Thrive, sometimes not always good for me.
Yeah, I know some people that have felt that way, that, you know, being around
When I'm
some
in a
of
good
that is hard.
moment,
It's great.
I'm going to go.
Right.
But when I'm not feeling that, why am I
Right.
going to go?
Right.
And put on the face,
Right,
the
absolutely.
blankness, and
Right.
have it eat inside of me, and have myself look at other people and say, why you?
Right.
Why are you here and not my son? I
Right.
don't want to say that.
Right.
Because I truly don't feel that.
Right, I understand.
But in my grief,
it can bring that up. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's why being part of all of this,
Yeah.
that, you know, you all are trying to make a difference, is fantastic. But you do have to figure out how far to go, when to go, what not to do, and to realize that bereavement in itself needs to be looked at, and bereavement groups
yes,
and support and letting that out in itself is really, really important.
absolutely. Thank you, Millie.
Yeah.
You know, I want to just put out there that anyone that needs to talk about grief in any stage, wherever you're at,
Right.
you can always just message me on the Facebook page. My cell phone number, and I'll give it out there, 631-219-5285. You can reach out to me because that grief needs to be handled. And not that I'm a therapist, but I can hold your hand and just cry with you.
And you can reach out to FIST also.
FIST, Families in Supportive Treatment.
We have a new number at 631-822-3398.
Okay, we'll get that up on the website too.
Yeah, so that's important because we can connect you to a lot of tons of services. Yeah.
Yep. So have a great weekend, and our new night and time is going to be Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Look forward to seeing you Wednesday, and Steve Chasman from Long Island Council
Yay.
will be here.
Okay,
have a
wonderful.
great weekend. Enjoy this beautiful weather.
Thanks.